I'm Chinese. My parents are both from Hong Kong, and I was born and raised here in Miami.
Do you understand when your parents speak to you in Chinese?
Yes, and sometimes no. It'll depend. It depends on what we're talking about.
Like what?
Like if I ask them about a certain definition of a word or things like that, it gets a little confusing for me. Because we don't always talk in Chinese or Cantonese. Sometimes it's a little like mix of, I guess, Chinglish.
Chinglish?
Chinglish, I guess.
Is that your term?
Well, there's like Spanglish, so there's got to be a Chinglish, because I don't know how else to say it. It can't be Ingese, because that just sounds weird.
Okay. Do you know what being bilingual means?
To me, it means being fluent in more than one language.
Do you consider yourself to be bilingual?
Yes. In English and in Cantonese.
Do you know what code switching is?
No. What is that?
Code switching is when two people who are having a conversation that speak one language in the middle of the conversation or in the middle of a sentence switches to another language.
Yeah, it'll depend on who I'm with, actually. 'Cause sometimes, well, most of the time it only happens when I'm around some of my Asian friends. And it's not even like we do it on purpose. It's almost just out of, I don't know, you just kind of do it because you know that they speak the language or that they'll understand you, and sometimes you almost feel like there isn't an equivalent word in English for whatever it is that you want to say in Chinese. Because I know sometimes my mom will tell me really, really funny jokes in Chinese, but when I try to translate them into English, the puns and everything is just completely gone, just because it's just the way that you say it in Chinese that makes it funny. So yeah, I've experienced it before. It's I don't know what to make of it though. I think it's like I said before, sometimes you just don't find the same equivalent for it in English that you would in whatever language it is that you would choose to say it in. You know, because I work with a bunch of Italians, and Italian is very, very close to Spanish. And sometimes they will just stand there and just be silent because they're trying to think of the English equivalent to a word in Italian, and sometimes it just doesn't exist.
¿Y de dónde eres?
Vengo de Barranquilla, Colombia, un país en América del Sur.
¿Y cuál fue tu primera lenguaje?
Mi primer idioma es el español.
Do you consider yourself to be bilingual?
Yes, I do.
Do you know what being bilingual means?
Being bilingual means the ability to speak in two different languages and to understand the culture of people that speaks both languages, you know. In my case, it's Spanish and also English.
Do you know what code switching means?
If I know what it is?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Code switching is when two people who are having a conversation in one language change to another language in the middle of the conversation. Have you ever done that?
I do that basically when in the middle of conversation I forget one or two words of the language that I'm speaking, and then I change to the other language, and then I keep the rest of the sentence in the other language. I think it's not a good thing. It's good, but it's a way that people that have that ability to do when they're in a conversation.
Do you think it's rude when someone does it to you? Like if someone's speaking to you in Spanish and they do it in English, or if you're...
During my first years in this country, I always thought that it was really rude, really rude. But living here in Miami, you get used to hear that, you know, people switching back and forth from one language to the other. So right now, I use it, and I don't consider it, you know, rude anymore.
And where are you from?
Well, originally I was born and raised here in Miami, but both my parents are Colombian. But the thing is that my parents are obviously Colombian, so they speak Spanish. So, I mean, my first language will be Spanish, but very early on in my childhood, growing up with my sisters and going to school here in Miami, everything was in English, so I became more distant from my Spanish roots, sort of say. So at the current moment, I speak actually better English than I do Spanish. So,
do you think being bilingual is important? It's good to have?
Of course. I mean, especially here in Miami, we have such a diverse community of people that live here in Miami. I think bilingual is almost a necessity. You go into a few neighborhoods where if you don't speak Spanish, you really can't get around. Just the majority of people here in some of the neighborhoods just only speak Spanish. I can't get by just speaking Spanish. Communities that, like, again, they don't speak English. You go to Hialeah and you're not gonna find anybody that's gonna, you know, speaks English. You go into little bodegas and stuff like that, you're not gonna know anybody that, you know, speaks English. They speak Spanish. So I mean, it is very important, and you almost feel left out if you don't speak Spanish here. Unfortunately, for some of the people that don't speak Spanish, you're gonna sometimes you feel left out.
Okay. Have you ever experienced code switching?
I have experienced code switching actually. It happens all the time. I mean, you're talking to somebody, and you know, there's just those back and forth conversations where you can just say a Spanish term, like, you know, like when you say "tú sabes" or something like that. It's just part of, you know, it's just a way of having a conversation sometimes with some people, and you know, sometimes it's funny. And just the way it is. I mean, I speak to my mom in English, and I speak to her in Spanish as well. I mean, that's just an example of code switching. We'll have a conversation, and there'll be a word I don't know how to say in Spanish. I'll say it in English and continue my conversation in Spanish, or the other way around.